Man, God has been working in this series in my own life as I talk about disappointment or being disappointed. Now, I know that disappointed is kind of like a vague term. Like we can, encapsulate so much when we consider the idea of disappointment. Like disappointment can be not getting, the car that we wanted, or the car not working the way we wanted it to. Disappointment could be, like working really, really hard to create the perfect dish. Like how many of you guys are on social media sometimes? Okay, so like every once in a while, like you get a recipe or a recipe comes across, maybe it's a video or something like that or something or another. And if my wife was up here, she testified to the same thing. So don't be like, I can't believe you said something bad about her food. But anyway, she had this like awesome idea. She's like, I'm going to make this. And usually it works, but she put all this stuff together and it was like, okay, this is going to be amazing. It was in the crock pot. It was so on and so forth. And like, it was funny because like we both took a bite at the same time and we looked at each other and it was like, oh, thank God she doesn't like it either. And so I was like, honey, and she's like, no, I don't like it. I'm like, okay, whew. So we were like disappointed because there was a lot of food that she had put in there. Why are you raising your hand? Okay. Well, that doesn't matter. See? Some of us could be disappointed. Some of us can be delighted, right? Okay, tell me if this is fair, though. Like, in that situation and scenario, like, you make this food and the parents are sitting down like, that's so good, and the kid's like, I don't like it. Like, okay, but you liked it last week. We've been making this spaghetti for, like, 15 years of your life, and suddenly you're like, I don't like that anymore. Like, when did your taste buds change, right? See, that's not fair, Liberty. That's just not fair. Anyway. All right, so last week we talked about disappointed in people. Now, that was a hard message because each and every one of us have experienced things in our life where people have hurt us, people have wounded us, and we thought that we could trust those people and lean on those people, and it just did not go the way that we anticipated it would go. It was hurtful and harmful, and we talked about forgiveness. We talked about working through that. We talked about how to address that. And so this morning, though, I want to talk about disappointed with circumstances. Now, circumstances can be anything. Circumstances can encapsulate so much, but circumstances are times that exist in a moment. Sometimes circumstances are momentary. They're just like right here for a week or a couple of months or, maybe a little bit longer, but they move on after that. Sometimes circumstances last a lot longer. Sometimes circumstances are, just like this ordeal or this thing, like my life, or we think that our life has become one big disappointing circumstance. And we may subconsciously understand that the circumstance is momentary, but we feel like it's eternal. And then other times we fight for a circumstance to be momentary, thinking, oh, I'm just going to get over this, I'm going to move on with this, things are just going to get better all of a sudden, and we realize over a period of time that the circumstances may be a little more of a permanent situation than we thought it would be initially. And so disappointment can come in different forms. Disappointment can come in the form of sadness. It can come in the form of regret or dissatisfaction. Disappointment even come in the form of shock. But what I do know is in Proverbs 13:12, it says this: hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Have you ever had that moment where you're like, I hope, I'm getting there, it's going to be good, and then something happened, you hit this sudden detour that you weren't expecting. I know the Bible says that the way to life is straight and narrow, but that's speaking of a figurative idea that it's not easy to get there because it's a narrow gate, but we know that there are twists and turns, there are different moments, different situations that lead us in different ways, and when we have this hope, like we have this anticipation that things are going to work out a certain way, and then it's deferred or we're detoured, and then all of a sudden, like, our heart is sick. Like, that hurts. I don't feel so right about that. I don't feel comfortable. I feel saddened by that truth. You see, seasons of disappointment in circumstances create chaos within us. Like, we just can't figure it out. We can't get our mind to focus in. We can't get our attention in the right places. I mean, things just get kind of messed up in our minds. Like, I've often phrased it this way. Like, it's like, how many of you guys have ever had your kids, like, beg and beg and beg to get that little bubble at the store, and they get that bubble at the store, and they get this little rubber bouncy ball, and it's just like, ding, 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 and you're like, don't hit the TV, don't hit the, and then it, like, hits you. Have you ever been hit in the head with one of those rubber balls? Yeah. You're just like, oh, man, I can't believe it. And it's a choking hazard, too. Like, seriously, why are these people putting these things in there? I don't know where I'm going with that. Oh, I do. I mean, like the way that chaos in the mind sometimes presents itself is, I feel like there's a million of those little rubber balls just being released in a small area in space. You're just like, like going everywhere, and you can't fix your attention on one of them. You can't pay attention to something specific. You can't pay attention to the specific color or the specific shape or size, because there's just so many things moving around in your head. And these disappointing circumstances just create chaos. You see, the life of the godly is not a straight line to glory, but we do get there. So we're disappointed in life's circumstances. Now, I was working through different texts. I had a completely different scripture for this, but I really, really felt that God was leading me towards the book of Ruth. Now, I'm not going to be able to unpack the entire book, and I think that the way that God has spoken to me during this, or for this message, I really feel like I'm going to go back and preach a message series through that book. But there's something so significant that happens. See, in the beginning stages of this story, Naomi's life comes to ruin. However, her tragedy becomes joy and life and birth. Now, these are a series of setbacks. No, not simple setbacks, but serious setbacks, okay? Naomi and her husband and 2 sons were forced to leave the homeland in Judah on account of a famine. Then Naomi's husband dies. Okay, that's pretty messed up. Her sons marry Moabite women, and for 10 years, the women proved to be barren. And then her sons die, leaving 2 widows in the house of Naomi. Now, if you go to the cultural setting there, you realize that widowed women struggled. There was just not much that could happen. And they didn't have a son or a grandson to raise up and to help facilitate and support them in their need. And even though Ruth cleaves to Naomi in chapter 1, ends with Naomi making a bitter complaint. And this is in Ruth 1, 20 and 21. Like I said, I cannot talk about all of it, but I'm going to grab just a few verses out of it. And this is what Naomi says. She says, "Don't call me Naomi. Don't call me Naomi," she responded. "Instead, call me Mara or Mara." Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter. "For the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer?" Or another translation says it this way, He's testified against me, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon my life. Now, we know how the story works out. Ruth gets hooked up with this awesome guy. She gets married. Everything works out perfectly. It's this fantastic, amazing, incredible story. But we've got to realize that at the beginning stages of this story, Naomi's a mess. Things are just not good. Her husband is dead. I mean, there's famine and sickness and disease. Her husband is dead. And then her 2 sons get married, and she's like, okay, I got 2 boys. They'll take care of me. This is good. They'll be able to handle the estate. They'll be able to provide for my needs. Oh, my boys are dead now. Now I've got myself and 2 widowed women. And the 2 widowed women, she says, okay, I encourage you. I'm a bitter person. Things are horrible. Things are not well. Go and find other men so that you can be provided for. And we know that one of them leaves, but Ruth stays. She's like, no. Your family now. We are together. You are a part of my life, and I am not going to leave you. I'm not going to walk away from this situation. I'm going to stay with you. And not only in that, but not only does does Ruth stay with Naomi? In this situation, Ruth meets the God of Naomi, which is the God, the one God, the true God, the only God. Because she likely had other gods because she was a Moabite. And so they experience this thing where they join together, where they become a part of each other's lives, and there's all these different things that happen. They go to they go to, start searching for food, and then there's like this hookup that happens, and all these beautiful things take place in this story, but by the end of the story, it's beautiful, but at the beginning of the story, Naomi's sharing bitterness. Bitterness. I mean, how many of us in this room, now I know that this guy's serious quick because, like disappointing circumstances, they're disappointing circumstances. Circumstances kind of reveals a situation, not a point of existence. How many of you have been in places before where you just feel like it was a worthy decision to just change your name because things aren't good, things aren't healthy, things aren't well, things aren't going the way you wanted them to. I mean, my name literally means chosen one. What? And so like there have been moments in my life like chosen for what? I don't understand this. I don't get this. I don't understand where you're leading me, God. And there were moments in the early stages of my teen life where I'm just like running away from this mission that God has called me to. I'm like, I don't want any part of it. And so we've arrived at these places where we're like struggling, we're having difficulties, we're having challenges, and we want to name ourselves something different. We want to go a different road, and so think about these things. Okay, Ruth is an outsider. All right, Ruth is an outsider. Naomi's daughter-in-law, she's an outsider, but Ruth trusts in Yahweh and commits herself to His people, and she makes an offer of marriage to Boaz in an upstanding way, which is culturally honorable at the time, not scandalous. And God honors Ruth's integrity and diligence by weaving her into the big story of salvation. Okay? There is something significant. Okay, Boaz is a no-nonsense, and just kind of traveling, I'm just capturing the story for a minute, and then I'm going to get some important points. Boaz is a no-nonsense man of character, principle, and responsibility. Boaz is offered as a model of obedience to the Torah in his treatment of the poor. In Ruth chapter 2, Boaz follows Leviticus 19 by leaving work in his fields for poor widows in his community. He follows Deuteronomy 24 in redeeming Naomi's endangered lineage according to the family marriage law. And he catches the closer kinsman trying to defraud Naomi of the land and redeems Naomi and Ruth to his own economic disadvantage, okay? And God uses his integrity to save a widow's family, and he becomes, listen to this, an ancestor to the Messiah. And all these tragedies, God was able to steer Naomi's losses back into restoration. Naomi's dark night of the soul becomes part of the story of God bringing King David to Israel. The concluding blessing of the elders and the women of Bethlehem weaves the story of Ruth and Naomi into the themes of the messianic seed from Genesis. This book concludes with a genealogy that clearly connects King David with the line of judges via Boaz and Ruth. You see, this is important, okay? The powerful polarities of this story solidify that God's motion in life exists in the place that is beyond our comprehension. It's beyond our comprehension. We don't understand it. We don't understand it. We don't get it. It is beyond our comprehension. It's like these polarities, these two different directions. We feel like we're going towards, or we feel like we're going away from God. We're going away from His beautiful work and plan in our lives. We've got this polarity that's leaning in this direction, but in reality, God is, like it's our mind that thinks we are farther from God than ever when things don't play out the way we wanted them to, but actually God is at work in all times, in all situations, in all circumstances. Everything was being worked together. Even though Naomi was saying, call me bitter, Call my name bitter. Change my name because life is bitter. Life tastes awful. Life is not the way I wanted it to be. I'm broken. I'm hurt. I'm alone. You see, when pain almost strangles us and darkness is our closest friend, what should we do? What should we do? When pain almost strangles us, when pain almost strangles us and darkness is our closest friend, what should we do? We should do exactly what Naomi did. We should do exactly what Naomi did. Yeah, I know it seems awful, like how dare she turn her back on God and say, change my name, God testifies against me, or the Lord has caused me to suffer. Like, it feels like she is actually rebuking the Lord. Like, how could you do this to me? How could you respond to all the beautiful riches and the wonderful things that you've given me? How could you do this, God? How could you testify against me? How could you bring me into this place of suffering? We should respond the same way that Naomi does. The Bible often phrases it this way. We need to lament. We need to lament. We need to be honest. We need to be sincere. We need to say, okay, God, this is what's going on. This is what I feel. This is what I'm experiencing right now. Sometimes, sadly, responding like Naomi did, we see ourselves as complainers, beckoning pity for our situations. Let me say that again. I know it's not on the PowerPoint. Let me say that again. Responding as Naomi did, sadly, honestly, some of us, responding as Naomi did, we see ourselves as complainers, beckoning pity for our situations. Now, I know like some of our situations are just not good. Things are hard. Things haven't played out the way we wanted them to. We have serious dilemmas in our lives. And we're just like, God, what happened? And then we feel like it's contrary to trusting in him. So we feel like, our faith is not strong enough. I'm not powerful enough. I don't have a faith that's going to lead me. No. This story right here, Naomi she responds with the tragedy and the difficulties in her life by saying exactly what she's feeling. By saying exactly what's going on in her life. Exactly how she feels. We need to learn the beauty of lament. It just so turns out that this is an appropriate way to respond, and it immediately aligns us with seeking the only one who's the power to not only do something about it, but a God who acts decisively with perfect love. Who better to respond to? Who better to say, this is my need, this is what I'm facing, this is what I'm going through. And sometimes we feel like it is the most insignificant of circumstance. It doesn't matter how little you feel like it is, God wants to hear about it. Like as parents, sometimes we walk around our house and our kids are like, I am disappointed, Dad. Okay, what is going on? What are you disappointed about? I can't find my Lego guy. I'm sorry. I am really sorry. And I'll just be sincere. Like there are times when my kids are like, and I don't care. I don't care. I'm sorry, Liberty. I'm so sorry. But we get to these places in our own homes where like our kids complain and whine about things, or our spouse complain and whines about things, and we're just like, or our grandkids, or whatever. I'm just like, shut up. It's not that big of a deal. Just leave me alone. Leave me alone. All right? God doesn't work that way. And I thank him every day for that. Because I can go to him with the most seemingly insignificant of details of my life, and he's like, hey, son, talk to me. Hey, let's talk about this. Let's work through this. Now, I know that this circumstance is a serious one. I mean, this is bad. This is bad. All right, she doesn't have real solutions here. All the men in their lives are dead. That's not good. That's not good. So much so that they begin to beg in the fields of Boaz. They begin to seek grain, anything that they can grab and pull to themselves in order to feed themselves. And there's so much more to this story that I can't get to this morning. I want to make some clear points, though. Or really just one. Just one clear point. See, and I'm capturing that point. I'll get to it in a minute here. But we face loss of any kind, and we move forward. Like some of us are like, like you're either moving forward or backward. I understand. I've said it before in my own life. It's actually a descriptive word that we use to explain our spiritual growth and development. Like we're moving backward or forward. But the truth is that time is always moving forward. So we're always moving forward. There's always a destination. There's always a place that we're going. We're either making healthy decisions or unhealthy decisions. We're always making choices. We're always deciding something. And there are roadblocks to hurdle, challenges to conquer, painful emotions to sort through. But the Lord, who is merciful, waits for us. He seeks to settle our hearts. And when we are ready, He steps with us. Regretfully, foolishly, we think bleached prayers somehow make God look better or make our plight look less pitiful. Like, okay, I got to clean it up, got to make it appropriate, I got to make it right. God, how wonderful you are. No. God, this is messed up. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not okay with this. And we're afraid what other people are going to think. Like, you're a Christian. You're supposed to be, like, full of faith, and you're supposed to be significant and powerful. You're a pastor. You mean that as a pastor you complain to God, Seth? That you tell God your issues and your concerns? I mean, aren't you supposed to have faith enough to trust Him in all circumstances and situations, that everything's going to work out fine and great? And we assume that we are, in our prayers, in our destitution, in our expressions of life that doesn't go the way we want it to, that as spiritual heads or spiritual empowered people, that if we say things that are raw, that we're going to discredit God. He does not need you to give Him His powerful standing. I love you. He doesn't need you to be in His place. He's already there. In fact, I've often found that when I express my plight and I am honest and sincere about what's going on in my life, that others feel like they can relate to God more. That they can understand God more. That they can get closer. And we're afraid like our terminology and our phrases and what we say to God is going to, just kind of push Him away. Like, why are you being so mean? I mean, I'm God. I gave you all these wonderful things. Why are you talking to me like that for? Why are you saying these things? No. God's like, no. Come here. Let me talk to you. I saw it on line somewhere. It's like it was like a picture with a sentence or something, and I might get it wrong, but you'll get the point. When we mess up. We say one of two phrases, okay? For those of us who have fathers, we say one of two phrases. My dad's going to kill me, or I better call him. There's a difference there. I mean, you go out and you do something stupid. You do something stupid, and you're like, oh, man, my dad's going to wring my neck. And I know that there are points where you're just like, oh, God, give me grace, right? But I've always told my kids, and I will do my best to respond this way, that whenever a situation arises, you do not hesitate to call your father. He will be there if he can. We'll sort it out later. But in the moment, I'm going to be present. And sometimes we're like, okay, I don't know how to talk to you, God. I'm so scared that you're going to just look over me like towering over me in all your wrath and power and say, you idiot, you got yourself into this, get yourself out. Right? What's a common phrase that we say in our culture today? You made your bed, you lie in it. We made our bed, but Jesus lies in it. Right? We deserve curse, and he took the curse. And so where are we? Are we in that place where we're afraid to tell God because he's going to kill us? Or are we in that place where we know that immediately within our situations we can talk to him right away? Naomi's achingly honest. When she goes back to her hometown, she doesn't pretend that everything is fine. She doesn't cram her pain into a closet and shut the door. She invites other peers. She invites others to peer into the dark corners of her bitterness and frustration. She asserts that God has dealt bitterly with her and has brought calamity upon her. She admits that she's empty. She admits that she's alone. She laments about her suffering so that they could grieve with her, that they would grieve their own losses without fearing God's disapproval. See, Naomi, her words are raw, but she speaks truthfully about God. Catch this. She acknowledges that he is in control of all things, and everything is ultimately from him. Her theology is profoundly God-centered and God-honoring. Underlying Naomi's lament is a deep trust and understanding of God. All right? It may sound or appear as though she is resentful to God and that she has turned away from him. But she is moved toward God. She is seeking with honesty and transparency her need. She has returned to Bethlehem, to the people of God, and is realistically presenting what has happened to her. What has happened to her. What she is going through. It is in the aching moments of Naomi's pain that the Lord and his merciful love are fully discovered. It is in the midst, it is in the aching moments of Naomi's pain that the Lord and his merciful love are fully discovered. In Ruth 1:16, but Ruth replied, "Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." Ruth gives up everything to follow Naomi and her God, the God whom she has come to know personally as Yahweh, and she sees his faithfulness through Naomi. A woman who has experienced unspeakable tragedy yet continues to follow God, talking to him honestly with authenticity. Whether we want to realize it or not, often our authenticity in our relationship with God will lead others to him because they know that they've been enabled to speak honestly with him about their need. We have a tendency to pretend everything's okay when it's not. Now, I understand, like I know that there's some people out there, like every time you read, again, going back to social media, because that is so much a part of our culture, when you read their statements on social media, you're like, man, you are pitiful and you want everybody to feel pitiful for you. Or like you bump into somebody and like immediately they just begin to lament about life and they're kind of trapped in this place. Now, I understand that there are moments in our life where we are unhappy about our circumstances and we seem to be stuck in this place where we're just like, we feel pity and we feel pitiful. But, and I know that there are some moments in our life where we've got to realize that the lament is a place, a part, or it participates in our development and our growth with God. I'm not saying to dwell there. I'm not saying to exist there or to live there. Because Naomi doesn't live there. She doesn't exist there. She sees things changing. Again, I can't get to the whole story, but she begins to do something about it. She begins to work at fixing up her daughter-in-law, her widowed daughter-in-law with this guy Boaz, and she begins to work in ways that she's trying to facilitate a change to her situation. God is directing her to do things, and so she doesn't live there in that bitterness. She doesn't live there in that pain. She doesn't live there or exist there. So realize that when I say you are disappointed in circumstances, I'm not saying that you should live in a constant state of the disappointment of that. I'm saying that is a place that you can arrive at, a situation that you can be in. You see, Naomi's hope in catastrophic loss was in a sovereign God who is loving enough to respond. He was loving enough to respond. Now, if you go all the way to the end of the story, In Ruth 4, 9 through 12, this is what happens. Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, "You are witnesses that today I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech and Kilian and Mahlon. And with the land I have acquired Ruth, a Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry on the family name, and her dead husband to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are witnesses today." And the elders and the people standing in the gate replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, from whom the nation of Israel descended. May you prosper. May you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Ooh. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestor Perez, the son of Tamar and Judah." And we can see here, because the book ends with lineage. We can see here that God did hear Naomi's lament and responded to it. He gave her Ruth, he gave her Boaz, he gave her a grandson named Obed, who would be in the line of Christ. And he gave her himself. That is what her heart needed most. Now, this is in the Message translation, Matthew 5:4. "You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you." Or, "God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted." God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. They will be comforted. When we consider the story of Ruth and Naomi, we see the sign of God at work in life. That all the twists, all the turns in life are for good. When we are perplexed and disenchanted, God's up to something. We aren't being led to a place of dread in all our setbacks. God is plotting for our joy. Do you see it? She started. Naomi's like, "My life's a mess. God, I'm bitter. I'm broken. I'm alone. I'm desperate." And phase after phase, situation after situation, all these things changed. All these things happened. They were all working together for the good of those who love him or are called according to his purpose. God gave himself. God gave himself to Naomi. Oh my goodness. He was in it from the start. He was in it at the beginning. And I know that God wants to restore hope for you this morning. Because some of you are deeply maddened by your circumstance. You are disappointed. This is not what I thought it would be. And God, I am sad. And not like our parents or we as parents say to our children, "Go away, you're frustrating me." God says, "Come to me, I love you. I got you. I got this." I love the phrase of that. God is plotting for our joy. He is planning. He is orchestrating. He is moving things together. He's putting things in their place. He is positioning things in ways that are beyond our comprehension. And some of us right now, we are at the beginning stages of maybe a lament so that we can discover the loving compassion of Jesus. And then he can do what only he can do. He can do what only He can do. For some of us, today is the beginning place of your lament. For some of you, you've already made it. You've already stated. Now you've got to begin to trust Him, that He can be trusted with your greatest pain, and that He's going to do something about it. Some of you have already said those things. Some of you have already began to trust Him. And some of you are on the other side. Like you cried out to Him and He responded, and now you are living in the place of joy. Share your story. Say something. Because someone else might be in one of those stages and need to hear of hope and say, okay, God worked it out for you. God can work it out for me. God took care of you. Why can't God take care of me? Be a Naomi this morning. Be a Naomi this morning. Today, where are you? Today, where are you? And how can you begin to trust in the plan that He is working right now? At this point, Jesus, I pray right now that we would discover You. You've been working all morning, God, to meet us. You've been pursuing us. You've been chasing us. You've been after us. And You want to do something so lovely. You want to lavish us with Your love. You want to lavish us with Your love when we complain and we speak of the bitterness of our life. You want to lavish us with Your love after that as You're working in us Your plan. You want to lavish us with Your love as You fulfill Your promises to us. May we make discoveries this morning as we open our eyes and we make ourselves attentive to the work that You are doing right now. God, You are chasing after us. Open our minds and our hearts. Open our spirits to that truth, that we could see more clearly than ever that You are God and You are doing something. Embolden our faith. I thank You that You have preserved this story for us to read, for us to be encouraged. And as we pray like Naomi, may we experience Your response as Naomi did. Thank You, Jesus.